More on Moore versus the United States and a Supreme Court prediction. Hi, this is financial planner Sean Mullaney. Let's discuss. So this week was a very eventful week for those of us who do tax planning. Moore versus the United States had oral arguments before the Supreme Court. And shortly thereafter, there was a great opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal by a gentleman named Ilya Shapiro. And he makes a really fascinating point about the 16th Amendment and today's Internal Revenue Code, right? So if you look at the text of the 16th Amendment, it authorizes Congress to tax incomes from whatever source derived. And then you say, well, wait a minute. Well, so that's Congress's authorization. Did they use all that power when they crafted the Internal Revenue Code? And if we look at Section 61, which is the provision that taxes gross income, we basically see that what Congress did in coming up with the income that they tax is they did a cut and paste. They said, here's the 16th Amendment. Well, we're going to make sure we're taxing all of that, right? So they basically tax gross income from whatever source derived. The wording is incredibly similar. And that supports the proposition that what Congress did with the power that they were given is that they exercised all the power that they were given. Now, later on in the Internal Revenue Code, they say, well, we'll carve back, we'll not exercise some of this power. But they start in Section 61, apparently, from exercising 100% of the power given to it by the 16th Amendment. Well, why does that matter for Moore versus the United States and for all of us? Well, the Solicitor General in Moore versus the United States is saying that realization is not required for for a gain to be taxed under the 16th Amendment. Well, that creates a problem. Basically, what that's saying is, hey, that unrealized appreciation you had this year in your S&P 500 index fund, well, that's taxable under the 16th Amendment at least. And this gentleman, Ilya Shapiro, makes the point, well, if the 16th Amendment and Section 61, all this will be in the description below, if they're so similar, then that means that that appreciation that's not realized, that gain that you had this year, that is taxable under today's code. That means the IRS doesn't even really have a choice. They have to tax that. And I think that's a really good point. And I think we all know that is not taxed today. Right? So if it's not taxed today, Section 61 is informing us about what the 16th Amendment does and does not do, and that would make the Solicitor General's argument wrong. Now, I will say this. I think Ilya Shapiro makes a great argument, but it's not 100% conclusive to my mind, right? Maybe the IRS has just been asleep at the wheel. Maybe the IRS is like the cop that doesn't enforce the speed limit 5 or 10 miles over the speed limit. Okay. But we have to look at what Congress has done with the 16th Amendment taxing authority, and we have a great code provision. It's called Section 1012. I refer to the argument I'm about to make as the 1012 argument. It has the basis adjustments and the basis when we sell property, right? Everybody agrees that under the 16th Amendment, if I have S&P 500 index fund shares or my house and I sell them, that's at least initially subject to income tax, right? No dispute there. And in order to figure out, well, how much income tax am I going to pay, I have to determine my basis, all right? And Section 1012 tells me how I determine my basis, and it says it's my historic cost. Well, that creates a problem with the Solicitor General's argument. Here's the thing. If the 16th Amendment allows for taxation of income from whatever source derived, including unrealized gains, which she is saying, well, then apparently Section 61 does. And guess what? The basis rules are saying, no, it's just the cost. It's not the cost plus the previously taxed gains. If I own an S&P 500 index fund for 3 years and it has gain every year, then under the Solicitor General's argument, that gain should be taxed to me, and then it should be I should get credit for the ultimate disposition. Well, guess what? Section 1012 is telling us no. The basis is just the cost. That means there is no taxation on the unrealized gain. I didn't sell it. It's unrealized. That means that realization is a requirement of both Section 61 and the 16th Amendment, because 61 and the 16th Amendment are so identical, right? So I think Section 1012 settles this matter. Realization is, in fact, required for there to be a valid income tax under the 16th Amendment. Now, where does that leave us with Moore versus the United States? Well, as I'm thinking about this more and more, my current thinking as we near the weekend of December 9th is I think we're going to have three types of opinions written in this case. I think the liberal justices are going to say realization is not required for a valid income tax, and the mandatory repatriation tax as applied to the Moors is perfectly valid, right? So I think that's going to be at least three justices there. I think we're going to have some justices saying that realization is required and the mandatory repatriation tax is invalid against the Moors, right? So that's probably the three more conservative justices. And that's going to leave the meaty middle: Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And I think what two of the three of those at least, and maybe all three of them, are going to say is they're going to say realization is required to have a valid income tax. So that gives us a majority for realization being required. Now, where do they go from there is going to be very interesting. They're either going to say, and the Moors had no realization, so as applied to the Moors, this tax is invalid. IRS cough up to $14,000 plus in taxes they've paid. Or they're going to say, you know what, there was sufficient realization down the chain in this Indian entity, and that realization can be imputed up to the Moors, right? Now, I disagree with that interpretation, but I think there's a chance that two or all three of those middle justices are going to come up with that. I also think there's a chance, no, they will say, nope, no realization of the Moors, and the mandatory repatriation tax is invalid as applied to the Moors. So look, my predictions are just predictions, no guarantee they're right, but I do think it's very likely the Supreme Court is going to say, with maybe two sets of opinions, but at least five justices are going to say that realization is required for an income tax to be a valid income tax under the 16th Amendment. And I believe if we look at Section 1012, its connection to Section 61 and the 16th Amendment, we have to conclude that the 16th Amendment does not tax unrealized gains today. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please mash that like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.